Intellectual dishonesty alert. This article from Politico is an effort by the paid-off Lugenpress, and isn't it ironic to use that word? But yet it still does apply in this case. It's an effort by the Lugenpress and working at the behest of the neoliberal establishment to split hairs, to say, well, history's complicated. The title, Fighting Against the USSR, didn't necessarily make you a Nazi. First of all, didn't. Why the past tense here? Why not doesn't? In hypothetical situations, usually the present tense is used. But in this case, they use the past tense. Why do they use the past tense? To emphasize, well, this was in the past. This happened in the past, a long time ago. Why do we care? Why do we really care? So my main point here isn't so much to analyze the disingenuousness of this article, because I think it pretty much is self-explanatory. What it's a reaction to, if you don't know, is this is a case of Yaroslav Hunka, who was a Ukrainian who joined an SS unit and fought for the Nazis. It's okay because being a Nazi doesn't make you a Nazi. I mean, fighting against the USSR doesn't make you a Nazi. It doesn't necessarily make you a Nazi. No, it doesn't make you a Nazi at all. Fighting the USSR doesn't make you a Nazi, but being a Nazi makes you a Nazi, I would say. I think it's fair to say that. So, what's so striking about this article, again, which I'm not going to plumb the depths of the disingenuousness that is on display here. That's ably done elsewhere. I'll link to a place where you can see it done quite well in the space below. But okay, here's the thing that really just strikes me about this article. I was going to say it drives me nuts or drives me batty, but I'm not driven nuts. I'm not driven batty. I'm not going to let them do that to me. It's a choice, You make a choice to let people who are dishonest, get to you. To let their dishonesty get to you, and you can just choose to calmly recognize it and point it out. All right, the disingenuousness starts, as I said, with the very title of the piece. But in case you didn't know, this guy, Yaroslav Hunka, who fought with the SS in Ukraine, was recently honored by Justin Trudeau. And it was officially honored in Canada as a heroic freedom fighter. And this only echoes, of course, other such events. One that I recorded earlier involving Jon Stewart at a Pentagon function at Disney World. I mean, my God, the glowage just talk about a glow up. It's one thing after another after another. Jon Stewart, Pentagon, Disney World, Ukrainian Nazi. But in that event, you had Jon Stewart, whose real name, of course, is Leibowitz, introducing a guy from the Azov Battalion, who was a Nazi. So you had a Jew saying, let's all applaud for this Nazi. That seems contradictory, I know, but But there are no real convictions amongst the ruling class. It's all about calculation. It's all about power. And when they use an event like this, it's just, or when they are embarrassed, I should say, on an occasion like this, when they royally screw up, where they don't vet their information, where they don't check on their sources, and they don't think anyone else is going to look into things, they then they have to resort to this sort of oh well, let's split hairs here. Let's parse this. It's complicated. There's a lot going on here. It's not just simple. Uh, History is complicated. So. So the ongoing turmoil over Canada's Parliament recognizing former SS trooper Yaroslav Hunka highlights one of the most important reasons why something that's untrue but simple is far more persuasive than a complicated, nuanced truth. I've grown to hate that word nuance. When I hear nuance, I guess I said I'm not supposed to let these people get to me, but I picture just this kind of person. It's more nuanced. Let's have a nuanced perspective on this, shall we? What's nuanced about this particular case? I mean, as far as the guy being a Nazi, he was a Nazi. He fought with a Nazi battalion. He did not express any remorse over doing it. It was something that he felt compelled, presumably by conviction, to do. But this article tries to say that history is complicated because fighting against the USSR didn't necessarily make you a Nazi. Just someone who had an excruciating choice over which of these two terror regimes to resist. So they actually resort to everybody in the SS was guilty of war crimes. They're saying that's overly simplistic of a statement. They're nuancing something that they would never nuance in other circumstances. Okay? I'm going to turn the camera around on myself here. See this lovely guy in front of you here? I was attacked by the ADL and by other similar groups, because it was said that I was basically bad, that I was I was because I am the company I keep, I guess, and so for that reason they put me on one of their lists as a dangerous, bad person. Why? Because I was categorized as being one of the alt-right. And back then, of course, before this business with Ukraine started, there was no nuancing anything that smacked of Nazism, anything that was could be said to be of from or relating to a Nazi perspective or a Nazi point of view. If you weren't on the side of the ADL, then you were a Nazi by proxy, essentially. If you didn't think the Southern Poverty Law Center was groovy, then you were a Nazi. So it's interesting. It's very interesting, turning back to this article, that now that the neoliberal ruling regime is pushing so hard for war in Ukraine, for continued war in Ukraine, for the escalation of war in Ukraine, because in order to establish again, or to continue this proxy war that they want against Russia. That now they're like saying, oh well, just because you kept the company of Nazis, just because you joined a battalion that was a Nazi battalion, that doesn't make you a Nazi. Well, where were you guys? Where were you guys a few years ago with moi? You know, where was your defense of people like moi a few years ago when I got lumped in with Nazis because I was part of this coalition of dissident thinkers who included National Socialists, but were not limited to National Socialists. Well, that didn't matter back then. Back then, it was just like, well, if you have these kinds of people, if you associate with these kinds of people, if these kinds of people are in your ranks, so to speak, at all, it doesn't matter. You can claim not to be one all you want, but we're still going to call you one, and we're still right. And anyone who is a Nazi, we could punch, right? Punch a Nazi. Well, suddenly they're not into punching Nazis anymore, are they? Suddenly they want to punch people who are against Nazis, or who point out inconvenient things, like the people you're allying with in Ukraine are Nazis. Now, what are you? You're a Putin apologist. Now that's the new thing. Punch a Putin supporter. It's not punch a Nazi anymore. It's shifted, but there's never been any kind of principled position with these people. Remember, they were against Al-Qaeda and against ISIS for a long time, and then suddenly, in the early teens, in Syria, they were in favor of supporting ISIS and Al-Qaeda groups because they wanted to overthrow Assad in Syria. And now, because they want regime change in Russia, now they're willing to say, oh, those groups in Ukraine, those neo-Nazis in Ukraine, that we, even as late as like a couple years ago, even as late as like 2021 or so, we were saying, oh, there are neo-Nazi groups in Ukraine. Then suddenly, when the invasion of Ukraine happened and the war started there, then it's like, oh well, yeah, they're not really Nazis though, or yeah, they're Nazis, but they're not Nazis. Just kind of like Whoopi Goldberg's defense of Roman Polanski a few years ago. Remember that? You remember how back then these same wonderful neoliberal ruling class types, they were all about, we need to throw all of our defense behind this rapist director because he's one of ours, or whatever reason they had for doing it. I mean, yeah, he got a 13-year-old girl drunk and high on drugs, and then sexually assaulted her, but it wasn't rape. now it's like, well, the Ukrainian Nazis aren't Nazis. Well, I mean, where was this nuance? Nuance. Where were you guys with this nuance a few years ago? And I know I'm making it about me. And that might seem kind of narcissistic, but it's not just about me. It's about lots of other people. It's about how this entire dissident movement was smeared. Because there was no such thing as nuance back then, but now there is, because these people don't have principles. It's just about they use outrage. They use moral outrage as a weapon. They weaponize moral outrage. They don't feel it, because to feel it, you have to actually believe in something besides whatever justifies your own power grab at the time, and they don't. These are completely principleless people. Anyway, just wanted to point these things out. Let me know what you think. Leave your comment below.